There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Greetings everyone and welcome back to Dunwich Manor. Before getting into it, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you do in fact like the video. Now let's get started. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Now the show has definitely aged in some aspects, but most of the messages and morals are still as relevant today as they were back in 1959 when the first episode aired. As I'm sure you could have guessed by the thumbnail, I am talking about Rod Serling's classic, The Twilight Zone. But what exactly made this show so special that it's still referenced in media today? Well, that's the whole point of this video today. I'm going to emphasis on attempt, to explain why I believe this show captivated so many people. Now let's take a look into the dimension of sight, sound, and mind as we dive into The Twilight Zone. I have a long history with The Twilight Zone. When I was nothing more than a wee lad, I would get up early in the morning and watch it when it was airing. Sometimes it would be the original series, and sometimes it would be the 80s or even 2000 series. But in this video, I'm exclusively focusing on the original series, although admittedly, the 80s version does have a really good intro. The Twilight Zone was an anthology show that focused on different messages and different stories in each episode. One episode could be focused on the dangers of greed, while another one could be focused on human perspective and beauty standards. One of the most brilliant parts of the show was its ability to keep you guessing. From the start of an episode, you might have no idea where it's heading, and by the end, you could have an entirely new perspective on life. Before getting further into it, I asked my good friend Horror Gang what he thought about the show and why he loves it, so let's go ahead and hear from him real quick.
What's up, Dunwich viewers? It's probably been a minute since you've seen me. It's me, Horror Gang, as you all can tell. Hopefully everybody's having a great day, but today we're going to be talking about one of the best, if not, the best horror TV show of all time. The original, The Twilight Zone series, and it's the whole Blu-ray set right here. So, I was asked to hop on, just give a little bit of thoughts, what I think about it, and it's perfect. There's so many good episodes. The reason why it has such a huge fan base is because of the atmosphere, the stories, the writing. There's tons of great actors in here all throughout every season. It's just awesome. Let's hop right more into it. Let's say you've never watched an episode of the original Twilight Zone. You know about Jordan Peele's, you know about the ones from the 90s, you know about the movie, but you've never seen the original series. Just sit down, grab some popcorn, get you a drink, whatever. Turn on that very first episode, Where Is Everybody? I mean, it starts off with such a great episode about a guy who comes back into town and nobody's there. I have so many episodes I could talk to you about, so I'm just going to name my top 5. But if you are familiar with the original series, everybody and their mom would say that the best episode or the most known episode is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, where I believe it's William Shatner. He's on the plane and there's a little gremlin messing with the wing of it, and he keeps looking out the window. He sees it, nobody else sees it. That's a great episode. But for my number one all-time favorite, okay, fine, no order, but Where Is Everybody? The Invaders. I'm also gonna say A Penny for Your Thoughts. That one is really good. Lots of suspense. They all have great suspense, but A Penny for Your Thoughts. Let's see. To Serve Man, and we'll do The Obsolete Man. I mean, that's a solid top 5, and there's tons of great episodes. I highly recommend you check this out, especially if you love horror and classic horror. The black and white classic horror is your thing. Check out the original Twilight Zone series. And if you don't listen to me, listen to the Dunwich Manor, because he knows what he's talking about. So that's right. That's all I gotta say. The Twilight Zone is awesome. One of my favorite horror TV show, probably my favorite horror TV show of all time. And yeah, every time I rewatch a certain episode or seen one that I haven't seen in forever, it just brings back oh yeah, this is why this is so great. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening to me, Horror Gang. And yeah, make sure to sub to Dunwich and go watch The Twilight Zone.
Thank you for that input, Horror Gang. Go subscribe to him. His channel is in the description. Check him out. But as you can see, there's plenty to love about the Twilight Zone. Its influence can be seen years later in shows like Black Mirror, which is basically just an updated and more futuristic version of the Twilight Zone. And references are all over pop culture, like in Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, when he does this little scene, which is a reference to Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Mr. Ventura. Mr. Ventura.
There's someone on the way.
There's a man out there.
What? Look, he's crawling on...
Now, seeing its influence is great, but what about the actual content? What kept people coming back and watching every episode? I personally would say it's the charm, lessons, and mystery of the show, but honestly, it could be up to the individual. But since this is my video, I'm going to now elaborate on what I meant by charm, lessons, and mystery to kind of give you an idea of where I'm coming from. First thing I'll talk about is the charm. There was something about the way the show carried itself that kept it from becoming stale. Perhaps it was how self-aware the show was, or even maybe just the diversity of the writers. It didn't seem like it was just trying to win awards or just try to toss out episodes left and right to make money. In every episode, you get to know the characters, you know their struggles, and even sometimes their faults. Now, what did I mean by the Twilight Zone giving lessons? Every episode actually feels like an individual story, as opposed to something that could have been just every episode being a quick short trying to give you a brief lesson. Now, you might feel like, oh, I don't want to watch something that's just going to try to teach me the difference between right and wrong, but that's where the Twilight Zone excelled. Instead of giving you a scenario where somebody has to choose between right and wrong, it gives you a real life scenario, or possibly an exaggerated real life scenario, or sometimes a scenario that's not true to life at all, but it shows you how the characters' choices affect them and how it affects those around them. And sometimes the lesson was based more on perception rather than choices. Let's take the episode Eye of the Beholder for an example. And just a quick warning, there will be spoilers ahead, by the way. This episode is wonderful. It's pretty basic and simple, but it's still really good. It follows a woman getting facial surgery because apparently she's just extremely ugly and everybody's freaked out by her appearance. So we just kind of follow her throughout the story, but she has her face covered in bandages and you never really see the people around her, but you know she must have looked pretty gnarly before the surgery. Now the hope is, of course, that the surgery fixed her face and made her look a lot more like a normal person. Towards the end, the bandages are finally removed and we get to see that she's gorgeous. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but everybody around her is shocked because it shows us the other characters and they all look, in my opinion, very ugly. They have very disfigured faces and they're just not very good looking. But to them, she's the one that looks very disfigured and ugly. So it's interesting. We get to see basically an alien perspective on how we look normal to each other, but perhaps our normal is different from another person's normal. And that's all the episode was trying to say. It's nothing extremely deep or anything super special, but it's something that's very true. The whole idea of beauty is really up to the person that is beholding it. Like, I could say my outfit is sick, but other people could point and laugh at me and they would be completely valid in doing that because it's weird. Now this episode is a bit more blatant in its lesson, but there are other episodes that are a little less obvious. A good example of an episode that you have no idea where it's going is The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Basically, it's a really nice neighborhood, kind of like your American Dream neighborhood. Everybody sees a comet land far away and some of them are speculating what it is, but then their neighborhood, everybody in the neighborhood starts having problems with machines and power and everything's just fluctuating. And at some point, a young boy that's been reading comics suggests, hey, maybe it's aliens or monsters doing it. And of course, this is just a goofy thought, but as the episode progresses, everybody starts getting more and more paranoid and afraid that maybe it is aliens or monsters that are taking the shapes of the neighbors. So everybody's kind of at each other's throats because they all think that, hey, maybe you're the monster or you're the alien. Basically, all this panic and paranoia boils up and somebody actually dies and the whole neighborhood plunges into complete chaos. And then at the very end, we pan away and we get to see that there's an alien spaceship on a hill and the aliens are talking about how easy it is to make people destroy themselves using paranoia and fear. I mean, all the aliens had to do was flicker the power basically and everybody started trying to kill each other. Now, at first glance, especially with the aliens at the end, this all might seem kind of goofy and ridiculous, but the lesson behind it is very real and very true. You have to be careful when it comes to fear and paranoia. You can't let them rule your decisions, otherwise really bad mistakes could be made. You have to stay focused and you have to stay calm, or at least to the best of your ability.
Understand the procedure now? Just stop a few of their machines and radios and telephones and lawnmowers. Throw them into darkness for a few hours and then Sit back and watch the pattern.
And finally, there's one more episode I want to talk to you guys about. This one, a few more of you might know. It's a little bit more famous, but it is also one of the cruelest episodes. In this episode, we follow a sweet older man that loves to read books. He's also played by Burgess Meredith, who is a famous actor if you know who he is. But yeah, this guy loves reading books. I mean, he's at work, he's reading books, he's at home, he would be reading books, but his wife took all of the books and anything that he could read away because it's such a big problem. But all this guy really wants to do is just have time to read books. So because his wife won't let him read at home, he does try to read a lot more at work, which of course is interfering with his job and his duties. But I kind of feel for him. Basically, he gets a bunch of flack from his wife and his boss. So one day he finally decides he wants some peace and quiet to be able to read. So he heads into the safe of the bank that he works at. Doesn't lock it, but he puts himself in there so he can read in peace. And then boom, a bomb hits the town and literally kills everyone and everything around him, except he survives because he was protected in the safe. Now trust me, this doesn't seem as random as it is when I'm explaining it to you. If you actually watch the episode, there are clues here and there that actually make this make a little bit more sense. But it is still a little bit of a surprise. At this point, it actually gets kind of dark because he's walking around and he finds a gun. And he realizes, hey, if everybody else is dead, then why should I still be alive? I have nothing to do. So he's actually almost about to unalive himself when he notices a book on the ground. And after seeing this book, he looks up and he realizes that, oh, the public library is still intact and there's so many books. And so he runs over to the books and he sees that he can read for forever, basically. And this is where the name of the episode comes into play, Time Enough at Last, because he finally has enough time to read everything that he's wanted to read. That's always been the problem. He hasn't had time. He's always working or helping his wife at home, but now he has time.
There's all the time I need and all the time I want. Time. There's time enough at last.
So he gets all the books organized and he's ready to start reading, but right before he does, he notices a book on the ground, so he leans over to pick it up and that's right, his glasses fall off and shatter, leaving him unable to read all the books that he's wanted to. Now this may seem like a very small thing to a lot of people, but honestly when I first watched this episode when I was about 11 or 12, it put me into a pretty deep depression episode. I think one of the reasons it was so impactful not only on me, but on so many other people, was because it's unapologetically real. Now, of course, I don't mean everything's real. It's not very likely that a bomb would drop killing everyone except for one guy and then would leave a bunch of books intact. That part's not real. But I mean, the lesson is very real. And the lesson is, life's not fair. Even though this guy didn't need to learn a lesson, he was a very kind, sweet old man who just wanted to read, and he was still, even though he was slacking a little bit, he was still doing his part in the town. He still suffers this fate, and it's not fair. I mean, it sucks to realize, but bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. It's not fair either way. But what we have to accept is that that's how it is. That's how things are. And honestly, this episode is even crueler than that, because not only has he lost a chance to read, which is all that he's ever wanted to do, he's lost his only chance to do what he's always wanted to do, but he's lost his gun, which was going to be his only way out. So now he has no choice but to just sit there and do nothing until he probably dies, or maybe a search party comes and saves him. And honestly, that has to be one of the worst tortures, to be surrounded by stuff that you love, but completely unable to enjoy it.
Fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now. There was all the time I needed. That's not fair. That's not fair.
And after that surprisingly serious little section, let's get on to the final point that I made. The mystery of the show. Going into an episode, you never know if it's going to be funny, happy, goofy, sad, or serious. Sometimes they make you question yourself and all your decisions, while other times they just make you have a good laugh. I think I can honestly say that there's probably one episode for almost every type of person out there, or at least something that you might be able to relate to. So I'm going to encourage you to look into it, and whatever you learn or discover, I ask you to remember it well, because it may be a rare bit of knowledge that can only be found in the Twilight Zone. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I loved making this episode. And if you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you enjoy the Twilight Zone or audiobooks or audio dramas, I'd highly recommend checking out the Twilight Zone audio dramas on YouTube. There are hours and hours of it, and it's basically just the TV episodes in radio drama format. I want to give one more quick shout out to Horror Gang for his part in this video. I appreciate him coming on and explaining what he loves about the Twilight Zone, so go ahead and check him out. Again, his channel is in the description. But that'll do it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time at Dunwich Manor.